In today's episode of the Terrible Movie Collab series, I'm joined for the first time ever by NorrenRad89 as we discuss the 2016 movie Zombies, which is made by The Asylum. However, will this be the first movie to achieve over half a star out of 5 in this rating of Terrible Movie Collab series? Well, stick around and let's talk about it. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to the channel, whether you're new or returning. Thank you for clicking onto this video where we're going to talk about Zombies, directed by Glenn Miller and starring Andrew Asper, Ione Butler, Lala Nasta and Kim Nielsen. And Zombies tells the story of a virus that spreads through Eden Wildlife Zoo. The people that are still left in the park want to try stop these animals that's been infected from getting out of the zoo and infecting the city. And before we continue on with today's video, I would just want to give a quick thank you to all my awesome Patreons who really help to support the channel and also are just awesome and amazing people. If you're interested in joining Patreon yourself, the link is down below in the description box. You can also shop and buy some merch, and I would love to see you over on my Patreon where you can access all these Terrible Movie Collab videos early before general release. Now, let's get back to the video. So Zombies came out in 2016. So going into this movie, when I picked this assignment for Norren, who's joining me for today's collaboration, which a link is down below in the description box, please go subscribe to him and go show him some massive love and support as he's on his route to 500 subscribers as of this video. But going into this one, of course, the other installments in the Terrible Movie Collab Season 2 so far haven't been great. But what can I say about this one? Well, there's actually some impressive elements here. Yeah, I know. Shock, right? So, Zombies, it's got an interesting plot, right? So, of course, it's about zombies. It's about these animals getting infected with this virus, and the people trapped inside want to stop, of course, these animals who are infected, but also stop them from infecting the birds, because if the birds fly out over the walls and get into the city, it can infect everyone else. So, being honest, there is a couple of things actually in this movie that is utilized quite well, and also an interesting idea that is afoot. And I really can respect that, because at least The Asylum, as much as they're known for mockbusters, and you guys have known, I've talked about those plenty on the channel, they tried to do something different. Now, Glenn Miller directs this movie, and of course, on the channel, like last year, I believe it was, I reviewed Top Gunner Danger Zone. Yeah, you guys probably saw that review, that rip-off of Top Gun Maverick at the time. Now, the interesting fact about this movie, however, with Glenn Miller also in the positives, you guys are probably not going to believe this, Matthew Lillard is in this movie. And you might be thinking, Mike? Matthew Lillard in an Asylum movie? Yeah, he is actually really good friends with Glenn Miller, and he actually plays a hand puppet of one of these kind of infected giraffes in one of the scenes. And I just thought that was just so unique and so cool that Matthew Lillard, although not actually on screen, you can't see him, does a hand puppeting for a giraffe in an Asylum movie. I was like, wow, my mind was absolutely blown. And also in the first kind of 5 minutes of this movie, before we kind of go into our main titles, which are title cards, are actually not too bad. Yeah, I would say that although it is some bad CG, it's quite a bit of a gory kill involving an eyeball. And I was like, wow, The Asylum is really going all out there with this movie. So that ultimately, I would say, is my positives. Along with the last point I just want to make is that at least it's shot in a zoo. It looks nice. The cinematography at points here actually isn't too bad. But there's a lot of negatives. So without further ado, before I get into them, let me hand it over to my guest today of NorrenRad89 to tell you what his thoughts are on Zombies.
What's up, everyone? It's your boy NorrenRad89 here, and first and foremost, I want to give a shout out and thanks to Mike for inviting me onto his channel, Did You See That, to talk Zombies, this 2016 Asylum film. Oh, Mike, what did you get me into, man? But in all seriousness, for real, I had a blast watching this film. Like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a great film. This is an asylum movie, so when you get into those kind of movies, you know what you're kind of getting into. You know, it's kind of calls back to those trauma films from back in the day, some early 90s, you know, trauma films and 80s ones where it's just really bad, kind of on purpose almost, and stuff like that. But like I said, today we're discussing Zombies from 2016. It's currently streaming on Tubi. That's where you can check it out. And let's get into some of the positives, the negatives, and all that kind of stuff, and also pop out a rating for this bad boy. So the main plot of our story is that in like a safari park kind of zoo area type enclosure place, a zombie virus kind of goes and starts spreading through all the animals, and the staff members there and the doctors and stuff have to prevent it from escaping, you know what I mean? So it doesn't affect the entire city. So that's mainly our setup. So it's kind of very simple zombie story and stuff like that. They mainly want to stop them from getting to the aviary, because that's where the birds are, because if the birds get zombified, then they're going to be able to carry the virus, you know, across state lines into different countries and stuff. So you just definitely don't want that to happen. That's their main goal. And now let's talk about some of the positives right away. Is that when it comes to these kind of films, like, I kind of turn my brain off a bit, and I'm able to watch them in a different way. Like I said, I don't go in with like these, you know, crazy Oscar type glasses on, and I'm like critiquing every moment or everything, you know what I mean? Of course, there's very bad stuff in this film, but for me, I get a kick out of anything that's zombie. I love zombie virus type stuff. That's one of my favorite subgenres of horror, so I'm going to get some kind of entertainment out of any of that stuff. And for me, the premise of this one is actually kind of cool. Like, I mean, it makes sense that like that's what they would do if a zombie apocalypse kind of virus thing started happening in a zombie or like a safari park like that. Of course, you would not want it to get to the birds, because then they're going to spread it all over the place. Another positive right away is that I watched this one with my wife, so it was just fabulous to just really laugh my ass off with her and like crack it up. Like, I was having much more time just enjoying it and it being like a couple thing. We're having fun with it. She definitely thought it was completely atrocious and like couldn't stay like would believe what was actually happening on screen, some of the stuff. But for me, it was just a fun kind of moment for me, you know, that I'll always remember, of us two sitting down together to watch this. And like I said, thank you and shout out to Mike for giving me the chance to check this one out and suggesting it. This film's also directed by Glenn Miller, and Glenn Miller is known for doing Zombies. He did Zombies 2, and he also did like Aquarium of Death, so he's known for doing some wild out there asylum type films. And another positive for me is that this film's only an hour and 27 minutes, so that's a very quick watch, very simple stuff. You know, sometimes recently a lot of films have been hitting that 3 hour or that 4 hour marker. Guaranteed they're going to be over 2 hours. And sometimes that could get kind of daunting when you just have movies over and over with that length. And for this film being, like I said, an hour and 27 minutes, that's a very simple sit-down watch that you're not going to mind wasting time with it, you know, even if it is that bad. Well, let's get into some of the mixed and negatives, because yes, this is an asylum film, and there was a lot to hate about this film. One thing for sure I must say is that Kim Nielsen, who plays Dr. Ellen, is, by far, I think, the worst actress in this film. And like some of her stuff, it is kind of bad to a point where I was laughing at it, where I was like, oh man, I can't believe like it's just happening. And I think it was the line delivery and the dialogue and the writing and stuff. It just, all that coupled together just made the scenes that she was in very cringy, and you were just like, you know what I mean? But to add to that, it was kind of funny because there were some other actors in this film that are like the safari type park people that are helping out with the thing, and then also there's the lady who watches over the birds. Like I think they actually quite well did a very good job, and they're trying to do as hard as they can to put on a good performance, which is funny because you have this one actress that's just like completely down in the dumps kind of area, you know, awful acting, and then you have these other group of characters that are like putting in these performances where they're like really going for it and stuff. So it's a really weird dynamic and blend. And another big bugaboo for me is going to be CGI. So when you have CGI and like really, really bad animal CGI and stuff, it just doesn't look right. Like elephants and the monkeys and the apes, it doesn't look right. But we also have a man in a kind of a gorilla suit, but it's like they kind of mix the CGI with the gorilla suit, and like the CGI looks nothing like the gorilla suit. It's like much bigger, so it's just like, oh, you're kind of jarred. Like, it's jarring when you're watching it the first time. You're like, what? Like, is this a joke? So it's kind of like they filmed some scenes and film certain stuff, and then they kind of ran out of money, and then they had to like get a guy in a suit and just do that for some other scenes. That's what it kind of feels like. I must say though, there was a really cool favorite scene of mine, and it involved Thea, our character who was the little girl, and she has a scene with like a zombified koala, and like you don't really get to see the action inside of it, but it's cool, the scene setup and then the aftermath when they find her and stuff like that. I thought that was amazing. The room just bloody everywhere, like she went at it with this koala and the girl's just covered in the blood. So that scene, I thought that was probably the most potent and like maybe one of the coolest scenes in this entire movie. So Zombies, as you can tell, it's one of those films that leaves a lot to be desired. You know, it's got kind of very weird, mediocre CGI, low budget type kills, you know, weird balance of acting because we got some really awful actors, but then we got some actors who are actually trying to put in a good performance, but the writing's pretty bad. So it's like, it's all this stuff jumbled together and mixed together. I do love our zombie concept, of course. Like I said, that I love the whole setup. I believe like if you could have got this film into somebody else's hands and you know you had like a $500,000 budget, you know what I mean, you probably could have made something pretty wild with this film. But yeah, I still thank you, Mike, for giving me the chance to come on your channel and talk about this movie, and like I said, giving me that memory of sharing it with my wife and sitting down. And if you want to know her rating, my wife, she was very, very negative on it. She thought it was atrocious, one of the worst things that she's ever seen. So her rating would probably be like a 0 or a 1 out of 10. But we came here for my rating. That's what you're here to hear. And that Zombies for me is going to nail in at a 3 out of 10. So it's just, yeah, I wouldn't suggest this to a lot of people. You got to be into these kind of movies. And there's, like I said, there's movies like this where you could kind of turn your brain off. And they're so bad, they approach that good territory. But I wouldn't necessarily say this is one of those films. Again, thanks, Mike, for inviting me onto the channel. Now, all guests, back to Mike.
Noran, my man, thank you so much for joining me for this collaboration, and an absolute joy to have you on the channel here for the first time ever. If you guys aren't subscribed to NoranRad89, the link is down below in the description box. Go subscribe to him, go show him some love, and thank you so much, dude, for joining me for this collaboration. And I absolutely loved hearing your thoughts, and the fact that you even got your wife to sit down with you to check out this Asylum mockbuster movie. You guys had both kind of different scores, and we'll get into mine towards the end of the video, but man, you know, just to kind of create that memory for you, that's really, really awesome, and I just really appreciate your feedback. And it seems as if we're kind of, maybe, you know, like kind of similar on this movie. We had a couple of positives. We actually found a couple of things here to give positives to, and yeah, I can definitely say that there is actually a couple of positives for sure. But going into those negatives, okay, so the first one, guys, this is so bad, right? So we get our young character here, right, who is called Thea. Now, Thea has been kind of grown up around this zoo and, you know, visiting the zoo, and she's friends with this kind of gorilla, right? So when it shows this gorilla coming out of its kind of hiding at first, it does look as if it is someone in the suit, as Noran said, you're right. And then it decides to show you a close-up shot of this gorilla, which faces absolutely different to the gorilla that we've just seen. So then we get a close-up again of this gorilla where clearly there's just someone in a suit, but at least it's a gorilla costume. It doesn't look utterly terrible. But then for some reason, when they decide to do a close-up of the gorilla face, they show this CG gorilla. And I'm just like, what? Why? You've got a gorilla in like a costume and someone's wearing that costume. The face itself actually doesn't look too bad. And then decide to show a CGI gorilla face. I mean, I don't know whose decision that was, but that was utterly a stinker of a moment in this movie. And then, as Noran mentioned, there is actually a couple of actors and actresses in here actually trying to do a decent-ish performance, but the issue is everyone else around them is that bad, it brings them down. And especially Kim Nielsen as Dr. Ellen Rogers. Oh man, she was absolutely awful, and she's doing these kind of like promotional videos for this zoo, and she's doing all these kind of tour buses, and she's like the tour guide. And then, oh man, this just can't act. I'm sorry, guys, just can't act, at least not in this movie. And I kind of feel sorry in a way for one of our characters, who is Iona Butler, who's actually done some voice work for video games and is actually been in Black Widow, the Marvel movie, and then she's relegating herself before that point to an asylum movie. I just felt sorry for that actress. I really, really did. And then, of course, the biggest issue that we have here, guys, is the CGI. And every animal is basically CGI'd here to the point where it doesn't look believable. You can clearly tell it's not blended in with the backgrounds or anything at all. And it's just standing out. And it just really stands out on the screen to the point where you're like, it's not even blending in with the trees right now. It's not even looking as if it's coming through the trees. You've kind of just messed it up. And that's the issue ultimately with Zombies. And a bit of a spoiler here, but this actually ends leading to a sequel. And they actually did make a sequel. And then the issue is, guys, overall with my thoughts here, is I agree with Noran. There's a couple of positives, but unfortunately the negatives stop this from actually being a good movie underlying in this movie. And they've had more of a budget and they kind of use of some maybe real animals, or at least, you know, make them look good and better CGI. This could have actually been a decent horror-ish movie, but because of those negatives, it really holds this down. So ultimately, my overall score for Zombies is a 1 out of 5 stars. So we've finally done it. We've beaten the normal scores of half a star out of 5 in this terrible movie collab season 2. Thank you to Noran once again for joining me. Again, the link is down below to his channel. Go check him out. I can't emphasize that enough. Such an awesome and great guy. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and enjoying this season 2 so far. Well, if you are, give the video a big thumbs up. And also subscribe by clicking the red button down below. So I can see you again more and on future videos. And until the next time that I see you, I'll be seeing you later.